Hello and welcome to the Wire Talks. I'm Sidharth Bhatia. Where does India stand on the events in the Middle East? It is well known that India now leans noticeably towards Israel, giving up its long standing support of Palestine. India has not criticized the bombing in Gaza and abstained from voting against a resolution in the UN General Assembly against Israel. Meanwhile, with President Trump consistently insisting he got the India Pakistan conflict to stop, Prime Minister Modi finds himself in a bind and has not yet made a statement personally denying it. Questions are also being asked if the many multi party delegations sent out to explain India's position on terrorism achieved their purpose. Who did they meet? Which countries have vocally expressed their support for India? We have no clear answers. All this raises questions about Indian diplomacy and the direction it has taken. My guest today is Salman Khurshid, the right man to answer these questions. An Oxford University trained lawyer, Khurshid was Minister of External Affairs in the Manmohan Singh government between 2012 and 2014. He was also part of the multi party delegation sent by the Modi government to Southeast Asian countries. Salman Khurshid, welcome to the Wire Talks.
Thank you. Thanks. Always a pleasure. Always a pleasure.
You went on a delegation sent by the government to Malaysia, South Korea, and other countries, if I'm not mistaken. What kind of reaction did you get?
Well, what is the word one can use? Uh, they were satisfactory meetings. They were comforting meetings, but there were sort of limits to which we could have got satisfaction. We were. It was underscored that condolences had been communicated, that all those countries had given their support against terrorism to India, etc., and hope that things would remain peaceful in the area and the region. But there were sort of specifics on OIC, for instance, specifics on FATF, etc., grey list, blacklist, etc., where we couldn't get clear commitments. They certainly signified that they would take it on board and they would do their best, but it was difficult in that short interaction that we had to actually get firm commitment. But I do believe that our diplomats would be able to have an easier path following them up.
No, but when you say limits, what exactly do you mean? For example, were they convinced with India's case that Pakistan was behind terrorism?
Well, to be truthful, we didn't get to talk a great deal about it, except that we presented the evidence that we had, both of the past and of the incident itself, and they took it on board. I mean, there were some interlocutors who were familiar with part of that evidence. Others took the evidence very seriously, but obviously, in the circumstances, we couldn't get a commitment to say, well, we'll take this now as our case and then we will pursue it. That was difficult, but they heard us very carefully and certainly signified that they would factor this in all their future dealings with the region. And therefore, to the extent that they said that they were supporting of India's position on terrorism, we would be able to say that we were satisfied. But it was a bit difficult to actually ask them to specifically mention Pakistan, a country, and say that this is clearly a verdict of guilt against that country. That was an issue that I think they avoided because they didn't want another round of conversations with a delegation coming from Pakistan pursuing something that they had said. But I think it was comforting. I think it was to the extent that if there were any other perceptions created by Western media and so on, we were able to dispel that very, very, very successfully.
Now, we've not really, sitting in India with so many delegations out there, we've not really got a fix on who exactly these delegations met. What in Obviously they were different in different countries, but like, did you meet very, very senior government officials, ministers, or as
Yeah.
has been reported in some places, it was mainly the Indian diaspora in some places, and it was really whatever the embassy got together? Did you meet?
So yeah, we had a very good, we had a very good sort of range of people we met. We met foreign ministers, we met deputy foreign ministers attached
In
to the
which
prime
country?
minister's
Sorry,
office.
in which
Like
country?
we met the foreign minister in South Korea, for instance. We met the foreign minister in Japan. South Korea was right in the middle of a presidential election, so the foreign minister actually left campaigning to come to talk to us for a few minutes, and then handed over to his deputy and said that all the details she would work out with the deputy. Similarly, we met speakers in several countries. We met the head of the Foreign Affairs Committee. We met the head of the parliamentary group, that French friendship groups, India friendship group, etc. So we did meet a lot of very, very interesting people. We met with those who were heading institutions of counterterrorism and so on, and particularly in Malaysia and Indonesia. So it can't be said that we didn't meet people of some significance. In Japan, we also met with the former prime minister, etc. So we met people of great significance, but to have expected anything more than that in a 5-nation trip that was organized at a very short notice might have been unreasonable to expect anything more than that. Diaspora was just one of the meetings that we had. So if anybody thinks that we met only with the diaspora, that's completely wrong. We had some resident ambassadors who came, especially to the missions, to meet with us and to talk to us, etc. Where we met with a range of diplomats from other countries. So I think it certainly was worth our while, and it certainly gave us a good opportunity to put across our case, which was heard at the right quarters.
What will Indian diplomats now have to do in those countries and other countries to follow up?
See, the follow up, for instance, we had already received messages from the head of ASEAN, but we have to wait to see what the ASEAN foreign ministers who met recently, and then subsequently as to at their various functions and meetings, what they will do. OIC, for instance, I don't think we've had an impact on the OIC to the extent that we were hoping. But then it was always difficult, both with Indonesia and with Malaysia, who are both members of OIC, and Pakistan is a member of OIC, to get them to do things in the OIC that would be of some satisfaction to us. But I think that the important thing is that it was important that we underscore our point of view, that obviously was contrary to the perceptions created by Western media. Many of the countries, we were told this, that you need to get your case out much better, and there was tremendous appreciation that we took the trouble to come to those countries. I mean, they were not really standoffish and saying, well, this is something official, we just have to do quickly. But they were appreciative of our having come and having met with them. Japan particularly, Japan was wonderful in the manner in which it appreciated the restraint and the care with which we handle a very, very precarious situation. And I'm quite chuffed at the fact that they picked the word precision attacks, and they picked the word precision and saying, well, that's very good. It was precision oriented. It wasn't just freelancing and wild attacking over a neighboring country, etc. So there were many things that we were able to put across that I think our diplomats will have an easier job now, working towards something more effective and something uh, more active in terms of results that could be attributed to the story that we've begun there.
Okay, moving on. You were a minister in the Congress government. Before that, you were a minister of state, also in the Congress, both times Minister of External Affairs. Uh, the Congress had built up a long standing foreign policy, um, pillar. And one of those pillars was supporting Palestine in its quest for self determination. And do you not think that this government has moved away, far away from that long standing position?
Oh, well, I think certainly, and if you've seen that they have shifted ground considerably since the trouble started in Gaza and in Palestine. They've shifted ground a few times. We have consistently, right at the top of our leadership, all the way to Mrs. Sonia Gandhi, we have taken very clear positions. Mrs. Priyanka Gandhi has taken very clear positions on Gaza. But yes, it would be right to say that the government of the day is far away from the position that we used to take. But then things have happened in between, and to be fair to everyone, uh, Israel has emerged as a greater player than Israel was to begin with in our times. Israel has played a greater player, and India's reliance on Israel for weapons, etc., is something that you need to factor in. But the extent to which we take a position on Palestine even today, it is disappointing that the government doesn't go as far as that. But then, things are very complicated. I mean, how much are we hearing from other Arab countries, for instance? What is happening in Palestine is absolutely pathetic and inhuman. And I don't think that you need to persuade anyone about how bad things are in Gaza. And clearly, on that, the positions that we have taken as a Congress party and our leadership have taken could at least have been replicated to some extent by the government, but I see that that hasn't happened. But we may not be the only government in the country, in the world, that has been a little remiss in this. I think many governments are remiss in this.
Let's stick to India for the time being.
Yeah.
What I find is that it's not only moving away from our long standing positions on Palestine, it is also completely moving away in the sense that we have been supportive of them in every way. We did not vote in the UN General Assembly, we abstained. We have not said anything strong about the continuous bombing of Gaza, in which children have been, bombed, hospitals have been bombed. So it's not a slight shift; it's a major shift, and it's going to be very difficult to pull back from here. So I think disappointed, yes, but don't you think it is also disappointing that we have abandoned principle completely?
Well, I think this is a lot to do with. I know this is a particularly sad human situation in which the moral element, the ethical element of foreign policy, which India has always had, could have and should have played a much greater role. But pragmatism, self-interest that we keep hearing about in terms of current foreign policy, and the post Cold War world, and the definition of foreign policy as we have been told in recent years. I think there's much to do with that. The entire spectrum of approaches that we make to foreign policy need a very severe look at, and certainly a serious revamping and reviewing, which hasn't happened for some time. I mean, and it's true about the neighborhood. It's true about our positions on China. It's true about the manner in which we've dealt with the United States of America. And really, we are looking very, very uncomfortable about our relationship with the United States as well. So the sadness of the tragedy of Gaza stares us in the face, our foreign policy in the face, but also our inaction and inability to intervene in any effective manner in Europe, for instance, in Ukraine and Russia. Uh, Everywhere we simply say both are our friends. In Israel Iran matter, we say both are our friends, and therefore we don't want this to continue. But is that all India has been reduced to? Just parroting phrases about we don't want this to continue. I think that's a very sad commentary on our foreign policy.
Yeah, actually, I mean, you've raised some of the issues that I was going to come to. You have been a foreign minister. You have known these issues very closely. You must have made policy, sat in on policy meetings. Moving on, the first mention you made, India speaking to the president of Iran, but Israel bombed Iran first, and we have not been able to even come out with a strong, cogent statement condemning that bombing. And Iran has been a friend of ours for how long? Civilizational.
Well,
So,
civilization, friendship, and then the important thing is that Iran has very, very, very categorically stood by us in very, very important moments when we've needed them. They've stood by us. Now, of course, of late, we are told Israel stands by us. Israel stood by us in our confrontation and conflict with Pakistan. But Iran has, over a long period, stood by us, and that is something that we cannot possibly ignore. And I think we have, in reviewing our position, in understanding, in formulating our position, we seem to have overlooked that.
uh, nor has Prime Minister Modi publicly countered President Trump, who has several times, I think I've lost count, but it must be at least 15,
I think
said that,
16 now. It's
okay,
16.
it keeps not going up by notches.
Yeah.
And he has said that he got India and Pakistan to stop the conflict. Surely, as head of government, Mr. Modi should come out and say this is completely untrue, or whatever he would like to say. But he has just gone into a shell on this.
Yeah, let me just say one thing very clearly here. I think that there is a clear line between who settles. I mean, we have consistently, and this is not being challenged by the present government. We have consistently maintained that India-Pakistan affair and conflict and any differences have to be settled bilaterally. That's
Correct.
what similar agreement was about, irrespective of Pakistan having said that the similar agreement is being abrogated. Um, it has to be bilateral, and we maintain that, and so does the present government maintain that this has to be bilateral. So, did it really happen bilaterally with Mr. Trump, the President Trump, taking just a clever position to amplify his own importance? Or did he actually play a significant role? Now, I think our party simply said, discuss this matter. Let's get to the bottom of this, have a special session of parliament, and we discuss this matter. But this is obviously something that we had difficulty outside the country. We couldn't be discussing this outside the country. We had a formal position that the government had briefed us on, and we, let's call it the lowest common denominator, that all the MPs, including MPs of the ruling party, had to had to repeat when we were abroad. But there are dimensions in this that could be discussed. Now, for instance, are we by simply making phone calls to the Russian president and to the Ukrainian president, or for that matter to the to Iranian president, are we actually participating in a process of reconciliation and ceasefire, or are we just generally like everybody else saying that there should be ceasefire, but we had no special role. Now, all this must be understood by the people and can only be understood if the government comes clean and says, well, this is the record, this is the truth, and therefore make what you want to of it. But we will stick by bilateralism because that's a time tested policy of both the previous governments and the present government. I think that they must come clean on.
Why do you think that there is this inhibition? Is there something? I'm giving you two possibilities. One is
Yeah,
a possible inhibition to say, let's not take on Trump, he's unpredictable, for example. Or
yeah.
the other possibility is that something like that actually did happen, which is an outrageous possibility, and then
Yeah.
we are feeling hesitant to challenge him openly. What could it be?
This is getting more confusing because periodically, not at the level of the prime minister, but at the level of the foreign minister and at other levels, we have given a point of view that the government says is the correct point of view, um, and the president is seen to shift a little bit, very marginally, but then he goes back to his stated position. And as I said, or you've just indicated that 15 or 16 times he's repeated it. Well, he's done something similar with Israel and Iran. And we all know that it's unclear whether there is a ceasefire between Israel and Iran, and was a ceasefire negotiated by him. As he says, everybody comes to me, and they came to me, and I said ceasefire, and so there's ceasefire. But it didn't seem to work. It didn't seem to work like magic as far as Israel and Iran is concerned. We still don't know what the outcome will be. And even in India-Pakistan matter, after the DGMOs had spoken, for several hours there were violations or so-called violations across the line of control. So we just don't know what is the total content of this and what was the expectation and so on. And therefore, we felt it was important that there be an open discussion in Parliament so that everything is laid bare and we get to know what there is to accept and what there is to reject. And in that, the Prime Minister could also have made it very clear as to where he stands and what his position is. The Prime Minister does not speak, and we can't accept a foreign head of state's word for it. Then where do we stand? We are really very, very, very perplexed. So there we are. Now, I don't know whether there obviously is very little chance now of a special session of Parliament. So we'll just have to wait till the monsoon session, and perhaps in the monsoon session, we'll have a chance to discuss it in Parliament.
Well, we know Mr. Modi's record in coming out clean in Parliament either also. So we really don't know. But as you said, perplexed, and we are perplexed. The people of this country are perplexed, and in the absence of any strong comment that situation, what Mr. Trump keeps on repeating becomes the gospel truth worldwide. This is our position at the moment, that the world
This
thinks that Mr. Trump actually got this done.
Yeah, this is troubling. This is very troubling. But, Mr. Trump had said a lot more. He had said that we will now meet at a neutral place and the US will be involved in
Precisely.
negotiations, etc. So, I mean, there is no sign of that. At least, fortunately, there's no sign of that. And because if there were any signs of that, that would make it clear whether what our leadership has said is correct or what the government has formally put out is correct. But right now, everything hangs in the air. So nobody really knows. And nobody really knows what will happen and what should happen now that the conflict has been concluded. There is a ceasefire. The ceasefire is holding. But where do we go from here? We haven't been told. I mean, you can't just say that this was just a 4-day affair and for the government to say that the operation is only suspended, it is not been is not operation is not over. So where does that leave us? I mean, it just leaves us hanging, doesn't it? So there is a lot more that needs to come up from the government for people to be reassured that we are past a particular bad period and that the next period is going to be a better one. We still don't know what happened we still don't know what happened to the people who committed those terrible crimes in Pahalgam. Uh, Pictures have changed, the sketches have changed, etc. We have no idea about what the enforcement agencies have been able to do. In the past, one has always heard about, the terrorists having been encountered somewhere and so on, and being taken care of. But right now there are just too many questions floating in the air.
Uh, as a foreign affairs minister, which makes you a diplomat, you are being very diplomatic. But the truth of the matter is that as far as this government is concerned, it has come to the conclusion that silence is the best policy. And I know that the Congress has been repeatedly saying, Mrs. Sonia Gandhi wrote an excellent article. Your spokespersons keep saying that basically we are not in a situation, this country has reached a situation where there is very little information, real information coming from the very top. There's absolutely within or outside the parliament.
Sure, sure.
And that do you don't you think as a government is very troubling, because we haven't really, we are in the dark, being kept in the dark by this government. And don't you think that's extremely troubling in a
No, no, I do.
democracy?
Yes, I do think so, but it's not limited only to these very critical matters. It's spread over a large number of things. I think the very pattern of uh, information available in a democracy, um, no matter what it relates to, it may relate to development, it may relate to election procedures, it may relate to strategic matters, it may relate to foreign policy. There are a lot of things that are very unsatisfactory. Uh, so it's basically a fundamental approach to democracy that is a problematic thing today. And I don't know what can be done, and how do we achieve uh, greater democratic transparency in our country. These are very major problems that I think we face today.
You mentioned, Salman, in an earlier answer when you covered quite a lot, you mentioned that our relations with neighboring countries are not at their best. Um, do you think, as a former Minister of External Affairs and a keen observer, has Indian diplomacy lost its way? This is an overall question.
Yeah, I think. See, I think so. I think there is. We need to get back to the drawing board. Things have changed, understandably. One can't be static in how things were during the NAM movement. Things have changed enormously, but the relevance of NAM movement is today biting us back. That the idea of post NAM or NAM in a second avatar is today staring us in the face. When you call what you call multipolar polar international order, is that not NAM 2 avatar, or is it something else? When you speak of the neighborhood, I think one important factor about the neighborhood is what do we see ourselves as, and what do we see the neighborhood as? There's never been perfect reciprocity between the neighborhood and ourselves, for the simple reason that we are much larger, our economy is much larger, but they are very significant and important, and we've realized that today as the neighborhood sort of slips away into the hands of China. We've realized that. But I just hope it's not too late. There is much work to be done to ensure and reassure the neighborhood that we stand by them. but to expect the neighborhood to reciprocate and give us what we can give them might be something that we need to think about again. We need the neighborhood in many ways which are critical for us, just as the neighborhood needs us. But I don't think that it's enough to lecture the neighborhood and tell them, please think of your future. If you want to link your wagon, you hitch your wagon to India, you know where you can go. And if you don't, you know where you will get stranded, etc. That sort of conversation with the neighborhood, or indeed with anybody in the world, whether it's Africa, Latin America, or any part of Europe, I don't think it works. There is too much lecturing that we have started and too little diplomacy that we are doing. I feel that that's the big problem.
And you know what happens when you lecture, because you just take a country like Bangladesh. Now, I'm not saying that it should be perpetually beholden to us or something, but it is a mature country with a strong economy, and we have gone and made enemies out of them. Similarly, Pakistan, let's leave that aside. Similarly, with other countries.
Yeah, yeah. I think that I think there are many people who could have told us what to do with Bangladesh. Bangladesh has a problem. It's not just a one-way issue. There is a problem in Bangladesh, but I wish we hadn't just assumed that that problem will go away. The problem had been there throughout. Uh, had we anticipated it and done something, perhaps we could have reduced the impact of that problem. But today, that problem has grown into a monster. And how do we deal with that monster is the big challenge to us, big question, and a big challenge to us. Um, it's very easy to say we want to be a world power, but particularly if you're as large as we are and you have as large an economy as we have, simply because of our size and the size of our population. But to take the responsibilities of a world power is not easy, and to be able to fulfill responsibilities of a world power or even a regional power is a big challenge. And I think we might have made a mistake there. We assume too much, and we don't prepare enough, and we are not willing to give enough. I think that's the big these are big questions about foreign policy for the years to come. But I hope somebody can sit down and sort these things out.
What is the major problem that has become a monster with Bangladesh, may I ask?
Well, see, the major problem with Bangladesh is that there was a subterranean influence of the right wing in Bangladesh that we assumed for a long time wasn't there, that it had disappeared. And that right wing is associated with Pakistan. It's associated with the right wing in Pakistan. We just assumed that they were so happy with us that Pakistan was history, but we discover today that it's not history, and it should be. It's bad for Bangladesh. It's bad for us. Um, I mean, so much investment in terms of lives, in terms of property and money, in terms of emotions that we put into Bangladesh doesn't deserve what we are getting today. Doesn't deserve that at all. And strategic consequences of that is there staring us in the face. So we need to find long-term solutions to deal with China. We don't have. We simply shut our eyes and forget that China is a problem. But China is. There is a dragon or an elephant in the room that we refuse to look at, and we need to look at. It can't be that we can't find ways of dealing with China, and the ways of dealing with countries is not always getting into a fight with them. The ways of dealing with the country, that's what diplomacy is about. That is known for years in the world. Why can't we deal with that? Why can't we create a situation in which we don't see China teaming up with Pakistan, creating a problem on two of our borders, etc.? Big questions. What do we need to do with Russia? How do we revive that special feeling that we've always had with Russia, etc. These are major questions of foreign policy, and they're just not being addressed. I'm sure that I don't have all the answers, but at least the questions could be raised. We could at least consider questions and see if there are any answers that anybody can provide good answers.
I think you said somewhere that, or maybe you didn't, but I had this question that do you think India has a voice in international matters anymore? A role
Well,
to play, a role to play, not just a voice, a role to play in various situations, more than just being a market, more than, as you said, making phone calls. Do you think we have a voice?
well, you've answered that for me by saying that we have a telephone voice. We don't we don't seem
Right.
to
That
have a
was your statement. That was your
we don't seem
comment.
to have a we don't seem to have a physical voice, but we do have a telephone voice. But anybody can have a telephone voice. Um, this is this is really strange. I must. This reminds me of a joke that Natwar Singh once told me. Bless his soul. He said that they were in Europe someplace, and Krishan Rana was screaming and shouting about, uh, look at this happening wrong, look at that happening wrong. So Natwar Singh said, I called him and I said, Krishan, what's the matter with you? What are you trying to do? And Krishan Rana said, I'm trying to speak to Delhi. I'm trying to give a message to Delhi. So Natwar Singh said, I told him, well, why don't you use the phone? You get onto a phone and you get your voice across to Delhi. So it's the same issue here, that if they would only know how to use the voice and project it and get it across to friends and not friends alike, we would be in a better position. But I think we are so lost in ourselves and we are so enamored of our own greatness, etc., that we've forgotten the art of diplomacy in many ways. And I think perhaps what we need to do is to get back to the drawing table and begin lessons in diplomacy once again. I mean,
So you are
I say this with a little care because I know we have some outstanding diplomats, many who are still serving and many who are retired, but they're all available. They're all available to give this country a good a good point of view and to give this country a good status in the world.
no, but of course the political leadership has to be there. But are you saying therefore that in any situation, whether it's a warlike situation or any other situation, India does not have the clout to enter the conversation and say, here is an idea we have, here is something we could do. It does not have that clout. Is that what you're saying?
Well, I see. We can't judge whether we have the clout or not, but we've really forgotten the methodology. We've forgotten how to put that clout across and have the clout tested. Uh, I go back to having said that lecturing is not enough. Lecturing is not enough. I mean, this in the world, which is bursting with conflict today, we are giving out messages and parroting phrases about this is not the age of war, this is the age of peace. Now, how hollow that sounds today to say this is not an age of war, considering that we've just been in a conflict ourselves and that we are dealing with a conflict in our extended neighborhood, as indeed in Europe. All the routes that lead to India's prosperity are under threat, and yet we are saying that this is an age of peace, this is not an age of war. Well, let's get up and do something about the age of war because there is too much war around. And I think India deserves and India requires to get up and be able to say something and do something that will make a difference
And be heard. It's
and
not
be
only
heard
it's
and be
not only
heard. Yeah, and be heard and be heard and understood. I think that's important.
finally, if you were called and said, okay, you are full of these ideas, tell us how we should go back to the drawing board, what we should do, what would you say?
Well, listen, I this is
Example.
where, yeah, I understand, but this is where domestic politics this is where domestic politics and international relations come together. I don't think you can keep the two completely separate. You have to find a bridge between them. And I think there are serious issues about domestic politics and international relations. To think that people don't care about what's happening at home and people don't worry about what's happening here, I think is wrong. People do worry. And we need to put things right at home and then get out and put things right elsewhere. But we have to be prepared. We have to be prepared to play the role of an elder. We have to be prepared to play the role of somebody who can carry some burden on their shoulders, and we have to be willing to sacrifice. And of course, that's true not only about governments, but that's also true about people who support governments. We are a democracy, and there's a lot that people of Bengal need to understand about Bangladesh. There are a lot the people of Punjab needs to understand about our borders. There are a lot that people in Kashmir need to understand about our larger neighborhood. Um, of course, I'm not mentioning Tamil Nadu now because that seems to have subsided. The trouble that we have uh, in the southern edge has subsided largely. But to what extent is now that are we now beyond the trouble spots as far as Sri Lanka is concerned? Is still difficult to tell. So you have to have wide enough shoulders and be prepared to bear a burden. You can't just go into the world expecting that everything will happen the way you want it to happen. Things may not happen the way you want them to happen, and therefore you have to be prepared for some sacrifices.
But don't you think when you say the domestic situation has to be handled first, don't you think that the social situation in this country beyond the borders, states, is something that the world sees and is troubled by, and we seem to be focusing more on that rather than it's become all about elections, it's become all about appealing to your own internal crowd rather than then this trying to become a Vishwaguru just doesn't work.
Yeah, well, you see, I've carefully not used that expression because that takes me back to lecturing, that takes me back to uh, Vishwagurus should not be self appointed. Vishwagurus should be not self anointed. So Vishwagurus must emerge out of genuine feeling that the people of the world have about the goodness of India. I've always had a problem about people who say that Indian foreign policy uh, or foreign policy anyway has nothing to do with ethics. I believe that Mahatma Gandhi's attitude was different. I believe the first generation of leadership in India, post independence leadership in India, was different. There is a mixture of ethics with pragmatism, but it's not just pragmatism all the way. Ethics must have a role, ethics must play a role. And I think that's where India can truly be a guru for the world, is to show how ethics can play a role. There is today a pervasive presence of violence in the world, but there's also a great lack of ethics and morality in international relations. And therefore, I think that's a gap that needs to be filled, and India could fill that gap.
So this is what you'll be telling them if you're called to sit
Well, I will. I
across.
don't, I don't know how much ethics and morality matters to anyone that would call me. They might think that I'm outdated and I'm Jurassic, but I would still give it a try.
Well, I don't think you're Jurassic because what you were speaking about represents some 60 years, 55 to 60 years of strong foreign policy ideas that have been not just imposed but cultivated and nurtured over the years. India, in its weakest economic moments, had something to offer the world. I suppose you could argue that there were statesmen at that time, but at this moment, as you have also said very clearly, and it's becoming more and more apparent, we are not no longer the kind of player we aspire to be. And so I think you diplomatically, but quite clearly summed it up quite well for us. Thank you very much, Salman. That was Salman Khurshid, former Minister of External Affairs in the Congress government, a keen observer of foreign policy in India, and a regular speaker on domestic as well as international issues. Thank you once again. We will be back once again with another guest. Till then, from me, Sidharth Bhatia, and the rest of the Wire Talks team, goodbye.